Hi everyone, welcome to this new video. Today we will be building 3 JavaScript automation projects, and this video was inspired by an internet-made coder who did a similar video where he did 3 Python automation projects, and we're basically going to do the exact same projects but in JavaScript, just to show you that you can actually do the same things that you can do in Python in JavaScript. So the first project he made was a image editor script. So we're going to do that. Then a YouTube video downloader, and finally a PDF merger. So this is really a good opportunity if you want to advance your JavaScript skills, or if you're someone who's used to Python and want to look into JavaScript. Now, to do all of this, we need to install something called Node.js. Let me explain what Node.js is. So Node.js is a runtime environment for JavaScript. What this means is that it allows you to run JavaScript code outside of a web browser, so on your local machine. Now, in the past, JavaScript was primarily used in the browser, so you could only run JavaScript code within your browser, but with Node.js, for the first time, you could do it outside, so on servers. And this enabled a whole new category of applications you could write. So before you could only do front-end development, but with Node.js, you could now do back-end development. And this is what we're going to use in order to make our scripts. Now, just as an aside, Node.js uses the V8 JavaScript engine to actually execute your JavaScript code. So the V8 JavaScript engine is the same one used in Chrome. Now, Firefox and Safari have their own JavaScript engine. So really, Node.js is just a runtime environment and not a programming language, nor a JavaScript engine. So let's get started. So if you want to install Node.js, you should head over to nodejs.org. On the website, you'll be able to download the installer if you're on Windows and also on Mac. I would recommend that you use their recommended for most users and get on with it. Now, if you're watching this and wanting to use Linux, well, you can Google how to install Node.js. It's pretty easy as well, using the Linux package manager you have. Sudo apt something. But if you're using Linux, I assume that you know how to Google and to really install stuff on your computer. Alright, so let's create our project. So now I use VS Code as my code editor. You could use whatever you want. So what I did was to first create a folder. I called it Auto Projects Rebuilt. So yeah, I already wrote the code for those 3 projects beforehand, and then I'm redoing it and taking screenshots and walking you through it. So now you could name this however you want. What I want to put your attention to is the npm init-y command. So when you start a Node.js project, it is smart to do this, as it will create a package.json. Package.json in the JavaScript Node.js world is how you save your dependencies. So your libraries for each version you're using, it's going to be stored within that package.json, which is of the JSON format. The JSON format is a key value pairs, as you can see on the screen. Now, this is the default structure that you get with the package.json. We're going to modify it a bit later on, as to use import statements that are more modern than what was there before. All right. So now we're going to install our first library. So the first project we're going to build is an image editing script. Okay, so what I had in mind for our first project, the image editing script, was to build a script that will basically take a folder of images and then pixelize each of them. So basically reduce them in size, pixelate them so it will look like pixel art, and then you would be able to modify them manually to make it look closer to some pixel art. So that was the main idea. This wasn't the project made exactly in the Python video of Internet Made Coder, but I thought like I would insert in some variations for each of those projects we're going to build. So To do image manipulation, there is a library in JavaScript called Sharp. To install libraries in Node.js, you run the npm install command and with the name of the library you want to install. In here we have the npm install Sharp. Now that this is done, you have installed Sharp, you can look at the package.json file and you'll see that there is a dependency key with an object related to an object which contains the Sharp key, which is the name of our library, and its version. So now the handy thing with package.json is that if for some reason like you put your project online for others to download and try, then they can, by simply running npm install, it will install all the dependencies and the correct version. So that just npm install without specifying any new names, any library names. So this is pretty handy. Now you have also noticed that there is a package -lock.json, really nothing important here for our purposes, and a node modules folder. So if I'm making this video as for people who are used to know how to program, might have started programming JavaScript, but aren't familiar with the Node.js ecosystem. So node underscore modules contains our actual libraries. You would want to git ignore this when you're pushing your code, as it will display a lot of changes in your commit history if you try to push as is. So you create a .git ignore file and insert the name of the folder node underscore modules. But this is not necessary because really the projects we're building here are really basic. What I have in mind is that after taking some inspiration from those little projects, you go on and build something cooler. And that's basically it. All right, so one thing we need to add to the to the package.json in order to be able to use a new syntax for our import statement is to add the type key with the module string. Doing this will allow us to import using the import keyword instead of having const, the name of the library, equal, require, etc., which was the old syntax. Now let's create our pixelate script. So create a pixelate.js file, and in that file write the following code. So I'm going to go over the code itself and explain every single detail possible to make it understandable for you. So let's start with the first import. So here we import read directory sync, which is a function that will allow us to read a folder. Also, I forgot to mention, you need to create the images folder and the images output folder as well. So those are manually created. I created them. So what the idea behind the script is that it will look for images in the images folder and then pixelize them and then put the result in images dash output, which is another folder. So here you can see that we're importing read directory sync from FS. So FS stands for file system, and basically Node.js is a runtime which provides functions and other utilities for interfacing or doing stuff with your operating system. So file system is one of them. And the reason we're using read directory sync instead of just read dir, because there is also read dir, is that one is async and this one is sync. And I'm going to explain what does that mean actually, just in a moment. So now I created an image dir name variable, a constant with the name in case you want to change the folder and image output name of those folder. You can do that quickly here. And then I created a function, a main function, which is going to run. So here you can see that the code is pretty simple in a sense that it's really, you could barely call this a project, but you know, you could do something more with it later on. So now I created inside this main function, I created an images variable, which is unassigned. And then we're going to read our directory, our image directory, which will return a list of files, file names. And this, which is an array of file names, which is we're going to use to iterate through it and for select each image. So now we try and then catch. So in case somehow we're unable to open the image directory, it's good to do some error handling so that it doesn't crash for no reason and then or it crash later on. So that's good practice. Now, the difference between sync and async is that sync functions are executed one after the other, while asynchronous functions can be executed in parallel. So that's the thing to keep in mind. So synchronous at this one after the other, and asynchronous is in parallel. So if you keep that in mind, later on everything's going to be clear. We're going to use more of this async and sync nature of JavaScript for our YouTube downloader project, which I think is the most interesting part of this video. And in that part, I will do my best to explain to you how that works. Now here, after having collected the names of each image file in our images variable, we're going to use a for loop, and for each of them, we're going to call the sharp function, which takes in a path for our file and applies a bunch of operations. This is code specific to the sharp library. So if you look at the sharp documentation and go search, you'll see what are the tools, the functions you can use, and basically study them to basically use them how you want to achieve a result. Now, here I've decided to first convert to a JPEG. So whatever image we put it is read by sharp. It is first converted to a JPEG with a quality of 100. This is so it looks better. Then I resize it, and to resize in sharp, you specify a width and then a kernel. So the width, if you don't specify the height, it's going to scale without losing the aspect ratio. So just by providing the width, it's fine. I don't need to provide the height. And the kernel, I use the nearest kernel. So this makes sure that the image scales. So if you don't do something like that, things are going to look really ugly. So just did a quick research on the nearest neighbor scaling, which is the one I used in the script. What this technique does is basically replace every pixel with the nearest pixel in the output. Using the kernel nearest allows the pixeling effect to actually work well and look like pixel art. Anyway, after sharpening the image, I modulate the lightness. So the lightness is basically the same thing as brightness. And then I use the toFile function, which basically writes the resulting image to a file. And that's basically it when it comes to this first little project. So I'm not really that familiar with image manipulation terminology. So yeah, this is really something that once you know the library, you can do your own research and see what you can build. For example, could you write a script that would automate your thumbnail? For example, if you're a YouTuber and you want to make consistent thumbnails, maybe you could use that to have a script that will easily generate new thumbnails depending on a few parameters. That could be a good idea to build, you know. All right, now so you can see the result here for the Pikachu here. So we have the Pikachu at the left on the left side, which is the original images, and the pixelated version, which looks really like pixel art. There are some flaws, but you can from there modify it in any pixel art program. Okay, now has come the most interesting part, I think, is basically building a YouTube downloader. So to do so, we're going to install two libraries. The first one is YouTube DL core, and the second one is ffmpeg static. So copy the command here you see on the screen, npm I. So yeah, if you're not familiar, you can use npm install, but you can abbreviate this by just typing in I, the I letter. That's enough. And here you can see something strange is you have the name of the package, YouTube DL core, and then you have an @ sign with 4.9.1. So this is how you specify a specific version. Now, I must explain why we're using a specific version. So at the time of recording this video, the latest version of YouTube DL core is broken. So it breaks. It breaks because of something, and there's a fix coming soon. But I wanted to build something that actually works, so I basically specified an older version, a slightly older version, so that the script would work and download the videos. So that's why. So depending on when you're watching this video, when this video is actually uploaded, it could be not an issue. So you could technically try just typing in YouTube DL core without specifying version number. If it doesn't end up working, then you can retype npm I YouTube DL core and then at 4.9.1, and this will automatically replace the current YouTube DL core installed with the version you want. Now, the reason we want to install ffmpeg static is YouTube uses a protocol called Dash for higher quality output of YouTube videos, which separates the audio and video. And basically, if we want to, at the end of the day, have a downloaded video that contains both the visuals and the audio, we need to merge them together. And to do something like that, it's very straightforward to use ffmpeg. So really installing the ffmpeg-static package will allow us to use the ffmpeg from our code. Alright, so create a YouTube downloader.js file and a YouTube list.txt. So it would be not that fun to just write a normal YouTube downloader where you just enter a link and then you download. So I thought, what if the user could specify a list of links in a text file, so separated by new lines, and then the YouTube downloader script would read that file, parse and collect all the links, and then download each video. And this is what we're going to do. So on the right side here, you can see that the YouTube downloader.js file contains a bunch of imports and a main function. Basically, we're going to adopt the same structure that we did for the previous project called Pixelate. So here we import fs and file system completely. So yeah, there are many ways for you to import stuff from the file system. Here I decided to do a global import, so import everything that the fs module has to offer instead of just the specific things. That might have been just an error on my part. I could have just imported just the function we used using the brackets syntax. So yeah, sorry about that. Then we import YouTube DL from YouTube DL core, ffmpeg static, which provides, when you import it, the path to ffmpeg, which we're going to use. And then we're going to use something called exec sync from child process. This will allow us to run a command line, basically run something on the command line. And I want to use this to call ffmpeg from the terminal and do the merging of the video and audio. And finally, the end of line import from OS, which basically, depending on your OS, an end of line is different. For example, on Windows, an end of line is in text is specified by a /r and then /n, while on macOS and Linux it's just a /n. And this difference will make our code not work if for example you use it on Windows and you specify that you want to collect all links in a text file and you want to convert that list into a JavaScript array. Then the separator that you're going to use to delineate each link is going to be the /n. But if you do this, it's not going to work on Windows, because on Windows the separator is /r/n and not just /n. So having the end of line here module is going to basically take care of verifying what OS we're using, and then specifying returning the string, either /r/n or /n. So this is imported from the OS module. So both FS and OS are modules that are provided by Node.js itself. Alright, so I created a constant called quality, just so you can specify the quality you want, so high, low, etc. Then I read the file, the text file in the second line here. So we do and then store the result in the links variable constant. Now here it's a sync. It's sync. So synchronous. You can see again that read file sync we're using. Now I think has come a good time to explain what's up with that. Maybe no, actually just a bit later on it's going to be more clear, and I want to do the explanation there. So for now, just take it for granted that just one thing is, when you see the sync here, it means that the read file, the program will not move on until read file sync has finished reading, converting to finished reading the file. Then we have to do the toString and then split. This might not be very clear, but what sync does is to make sure that the code is sequential. So the program will not move on until we have finished reading the file. So read file sync tells us that this is the behavior we're expecting. If we were to use the read file function instead, what it's going to do, the program will continue executing while FS is reading the file in parallel. And this is not what we want, because we want the links to be there when we proceed with our program. So just to explain how we got the links in our links constant. So we read the file, we convert that to a string using the toString function, which is a JavaScript function, and then we split this string into an array by using the end of line as a separator. Now below we write a for loop where we're just going to iterate over each of those links. So this is the link, the for of loop variation. There are many for loop variation. Actually, there's two, and then you can use for each. For each is slower, but anyway, this is the closest to Python you can have, I think. Now we're going to be dealing with downloading, the actual downloading. And to do something like that, we have to use something called promises. Now this is where things gets complicated if you're not paying attention. So we have a try-catch block. So this is nothing new. So we execute what's in the try block. If somehow it fails, we catch the error and display a message and then return. So we end the program. Now within that try catch, we specify that we're going to download the audio portion of the video, and we're going to create a new promise. And within that promise, we're going to use the YouTube-DL package, specify the link, the quality we want, and the filter, which is audio only. This is YouTube-DL specific code. Then we have three event listener. The on progress event listener, which basically will display how the percentage of completion of the download while the user is downloading, so it doesn't display nothing and the user will think that the program is broken. The on end event listener, which is going to call the resolve function. I'll explain this in a bit, hopefully. And then the on error function, which is going to call the reject function, which is also something I'm going to explain. And then finally, the pipe function, which is going to create our file as video.mp3. Okay, so now what is a promise and why we're using it? So as I explained earlier on, there is asynchronous code and synchronous code. Synchronous code is code that is executed one after the other sequentially. Asynchronous code is code that can be executed in parallel. YouTube DL is by default executing in parallel. So for example, while I'm so YouTube DL could start downloading the video, and then the program will continue. This is the default behavior. We'll continue reading the rest of the code, and this is not what we want. Now, you could see that we chained a couple of event listener and piping. So this makes sure that YouTube DL first downloads, and then we have the 3 event listeners which listens, and then we pipe after YouTube DL has ended. So within that structure, the code is sequential. But YouTube DL itself is not sequential. So if we weren't not using a promise here, we just called YouTube DL directly, what our code will do is it will read the main function, start from top to bottom, arrive at YouTube DL statement, execute it, but then continue afterwards. And this is not what we want, because afterwards we're going to write some logic to download the video part, and then some logic to download the to actually merge. And what happens if we keep this parallel stuff going on is that we're going to arrive at the code where we merge, and then not have finished downloading one or the other or both, and then things are going to fail, and it's going to be very complicated to reason about our program. Now the promise here allows us to fix this. So the await keyword is really what's key here. And so the await keyword tells the function that is executing to wait for the promise to resolve before continuing on. And the promise, what it does is it provides 2 functions. So a promise can either be resolved or rejected. So for example, here we create our promise, and within we execute the YouTube DL stuff. And while it's executing, because we're awaiting, so using the await keyword, we will not move on with our life in the program until either YouTube DL has finished his stuff or it has failed. Now, this is why we use the resolve and reject function. So this is how we tell the promise that either the promise was fulfilled, so the code was successful, and then once the resolve function is called, then we stop awaiting outside. So the function outside will stop awaiting and continue on. And if it's rejected, then it's considered as an error, and we will catch that error and say we failed to download audio for the video actually. So hope this was clear. Also, the await keyword can only be used inside of an async function. That's why I specified the async keyword near of the function. So this is how we are able to force sequentiality. So to force code that is usually asynchronous to be synchronous by using the await keyword. So hope this was a clear explanation. Now if we continue on with our code, we have the other part, which is for downloading the video. It's basically the same thing. I will let you should just read it, and there is not much different except that this time we select video only instead of audio only, and we create the video.mp4 file instead of video.mp3. Once both of them are done, because we're awaiting them, so this makes sure that we first download the audio and then the video, and never in parallel, so that it might be never mind. I thought maybe it would be smart to do both at the same time, but it's asked to finish faster. So we could have technically put both the audio and video stuff on. Never mind. Let's just move on. This is much more straightforward. Download the audio, then download the video. Okay, so now that we have downloaded both the video and audio, we need to merge them. And one little code I'm going to write before is code to get the title of the video. We're going to use the title to name the final file, MP4 file. So here we use the YouTube DL get info, which is again, we use the await keyword here to basically not move on until we get that title. And then we make sure that everything has worked out. So we did get the title. If we didn't, then we throw, not we throw, but we don't throw here, but we handle the error. And that's basically it. And here, exec sync. So by using exec sync instead of exec, we don't have to write logic or use the await keyword to make our code sequential, because it already is. It's already going to execute as the main thing, and the program will not move on. And here we just write in here a command line command, ffmpeg command. So this is a ffmpeg command to take a video and an audio and merge them to an MP4. And here I'm using a template string. Here at first I'm putting the path to ffmpeg. So usually so that ffmpeg can be executed. This is important to be put at first here. And then here I take the title and then I replace using the following regular expression. This is going to make sure that no characters that aren't letters or numbers are included in the final title. Because if you don't do this, if for example the title has spaces, weird characters and stuff like that, then it might fail. The file name will not be valid, because there are some characters that you are not allowed to use to name a file in your operating system. So once this is all done and the merge is completed, we use the fs unlink sync function here to delete the video.mp3 and video.mp4, so the separate audio and video. So we don't need them because we have the final product, the final video. And that's basically it. So at the end of the program, we call the main function. This is the first thing we call. So that's basically it. So here is I'm going to download my own videos. So 2 of my own videos here in the YouTube list.txt file. I run the program using Node.js downloader.js. Yeah, so that's that, and then you can see that it's starting to download, and that's basically it. The 2 video.mp3 and video.mp4 will appear in your file system, and then they're going to be merged with the title of the video without spaces and weird characters. And now has come the time to do the final and last project for this video, a PDF merger. So there are a bunch of services online that you can use to merge PDFs. So let's say you have one page in one PDF and another page in another PDF, and you just want one PDF with both pages. And we're going to just basically write a simple script to do this for us, so we don't have to go to those ad-infested websites. Now here I have put 3 PDF files, so each contains a page. So a cheat sheet for JavaScript, I just googled this and downloaded it. You can put whatever you want here. And I have created a PDF merge.js file, which is going to be our script. Now this is the simplest project in parentheses. It cannot be called a project really, but anyway. I import the read directory sync. I import the PDF merger from the PDF merger.js library. So did I install? Yeah, so we installed the PDF-merger.js library here. So really we call the PDF merger constructor from our library here. And we simply, for a read the directory, so I have a directory where I put the PDFs, then we iterate through each of them and then add to the merger the files. So by providing for each of one of them their file name, so the path to that file. And that's basically it. And then at the end of the day, or once everything is done, we await and merger save. We save that file, the resulting fusion of those 3 PDFs as js cheat sheet.pdf. Now here, the reason I'm using await and then sync here is just because the library works this way. But if you keep in mind what I've explained about asynchronous nature of JavaScript, it would make no sense to merge, to not have the await keyword for merging. For example, the merger.add function. Imagine if you in parallel would merge page 1 and page 2. You would sometimes find yourself with page 1, 2, 3, and then sometimes page 2, 1, 3, and the order will not be the same each time. So this is why it's necessary to use the await keyword here to enforce an order in our program's execution. So that's basically it. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope it was a good introduction to some projects you could potentially do in the future. If you enjoy this kind of content, I make a lot of JavaScript content. So I have 2 long videos about how to make games in JavaScript if you're interested. And I'm hoping to make some more, and also some more general JavaScript content like the video you're just watching right now. So if this is content that interests you, feel free to subscribe to be notified when I upload some new content.